Well, good evening, everyone. And now that I've sufficiently depressed you, we're going to bring you back up. We're going to bring you back up with Staci-lee Sherwood, my special guest, who I am extremely excited to have on because I found Staci-lee when I did the horse show. You all know the show I did about the roundup of the horses, and Stacy's work was pivotal for me, and I'm honored. And really quickly, I just want to say hi to our Kim Mod, our Mod Kim. And I'm not going to say everybody's name tonight because what I want is Stacy's going to talk about her activism. We're going to see all her different pages and her Facebook, and she's going to tell us what she does. And I want you to put your questions in a queue format so I can put them on the side. And I am going to go now. I'm going to sit back and introduce Staci-lee Sherwood. Take it away, Stacy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Sandy. Well, actually, I wanted to start off with some good news.
Yes.
Actually, I'm not a tech person, so everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to start off with some good news. Most people know me for my work with sea turtles, endangered sea turtles. And for years and years and years, it's been, and continues to be, a huge struggle in trying to save the species. Kind of like with the elephants and the rhinos and the tigers and the wild horses. I don't know if we're going to be able to save them. I don't mean that as a joke. I'm really don't see how we can save this species. We're basically just kind of putting off the inevitable. So in 2007, I came down to Florida from New York, and I didn't know anything about sea turtles, and I started working with them. And I hooked up with some amazing, genuine activists, and they formed a all volunteer, highly trained, very dedicated group that went out at night and rescued sea turtle hatchlings. Sea turtle hatchlings are about the size of this when they're born, really, really tiny. The adults can be several hundred pounds, but the babies are really tiny and extremely vulnerable.
Cute.
And they basically have everything against them. So from 2008 up until last year, there were a few of us that went out every night, sometimes for several hours, all night long, basically rescuing these hatchlings from light pollution. I can tell you that the state of Florida has the most loggerhead nesting in the world, so it's extremely important to the global population, not just the state population. Because greens, we basically had eaten them. We used to eat green sea turtles. We had eaten them into extinction, and then we started to bring them back in the 60s.
Wow.
So, and they still eat the green sea turtles, even though they're considered endangered in the Caribbean. So Florida has become a very important nesting for the green sea turtle. And then, of course, we have the leatherback, which is critically endangered. They've lost almost all of their habitat in the Pacific. So again, we only get a couple of thousand nests a year, but it's become extremely crucial because there's not much land left for them to nest. So last year, Florida FWC, the Florida Fish and Wildlife, which is like a mini version of the Bureau of Land Management, a completely rogue, corrupted agency compared to nothing I've ever seen, decided out of vengeance and probably jealousy to remove the permits of the volunteer groups for no legitimate reason. And a few of us kind of took the attitude, well, screw it, we're just going to go out and do what we need to do. This is an endangered species that needs to be saved. The irony is, of course, that the state of Florida directly and indirectly kills millions of hatchlings every year. I mean, 3, 4, 5 million hatchlings every year just from light pollution they refuse to do anything about. So the number of hatchlings that the volunteers actually save just in one county, Broward County, is only about maybe 20, 30,000 out of about 200, 250,000. So that's a very small percentage just in that county and a drop in the bucket as far as the state.
Right.
But it's still something. And we had always hoped that this would be a bridge until we could actually get the lighting fixed. So there was some litigation, and kudos to the lawyer because he found a judge who actually was a thinking judge, and she decided that the Florida FWC was quite frankly full of crap, which they were, and told FWC, no, you have no defense. There's absolutely nothing legitimate about your argument, and they were told to restore 3 of the 5 permits, which sounds great, except there's only 25 people on a permit.
Oh,
And if you've ever
oh,
worked with volunteers, you know that not
yes.
everybody shows up. Right. So if you have 75 volunteers listed on the permits, maybe you get 50 going out kind of thing. So that is a little bit of good news that we got the permits restored.
Yay. That's
It's
good.
even better news that we kind of was a shot across the bow to FWC that your ways of doing business perhaps are going to come to an end. Um, FWC openly allows hunting of endangered species.
In
They
Florida. Just,
oh, they promote it. They promote it.
oh, I
Hunting
never knew
sharks.
this.
Um, a couple of months ago, they decided to allow hunting of the critically endangered Goliath groper, and they were going to
Wow.
allow. First, it was 100, and then it was 200 to harvest. We don't even know how many Goliath groper we have in the ocean, let alone in Florida's water.
Mm,
So this is the kind of agency we're dealing with. They openly allow all kind of atrocious things. They spray poison in the water. They spray nailed and diquat, which the European Union actually banned several years ago. So this is the kind of
of
state we're
course.
dealing with. Yeah, so it came as no surprise that they wanted to get rid of volunteers. But even so, it took months of not just litigation, but trying to get it in the media. And you know what that's like, trying to get the
Yeah.
media to report, on that. So
Anything like that.
yeah, so I say it's good news, but it's cautiously good news. But it doesn't solve the problem. The only thing that really solves the problem is to have like indoor hatcheries, because aside from the light pollution, we have hot sand. And the hot sand, Sandy,
Mm.
the hot sand creates only female sea turtles. There are
Oh,
huge there are huge areas where we don't create male sea turtles anymore. So even if all the lights went off and everybody complied with the law, which is never going to happen, we still would be able to crash the species because the sand can no longer make both male and female hatchlings. So we are facing a huge, huge problem, which nobody is really addressing. I think I'm like the only person out there really talking about sea turtles to the media, and certainly the only one telling the truth, which is kind of depressing.
and your
Um,
website shows it.
yeah, I'm the only
Absolutely.
one really kind of telling the truth. And when I tell people this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, is there anything we can do?" And I'm like, "Well, we can sue, we could try to go around the government kind of thing. But indoor hatcheries is the way to go. Another thing, just to give you an idea of the state of Florida that we're dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
is what I mentioned, the critically endangered leatherbacks, right? We don't have a whole lot nesting here. And
Right.
there's a lot of thought because they eat jellyfish, and of course, plastic bags floating in the ocean look like jellyfish. So
Oh
we
my
might
gosh.
lose, yeah, we might lose the leatherbacks, which are like as big as a car. We might lose the leatherbacks first. They might go in just a few years, like the elephants and rhinos. FWC allows FAU to experiment on the critically endangered leatherback hatchlings. That's not something reported in the news. That's not something anybody wants to talk about. And I can tell you that not only are the little leatherbacks tethered, so they can't move, but quite a few of them have died over the years from these experiments.
Mm.
So this is Florida. If anybody is curious about what goes on in Florida, it is not a good situation. So the fact that this lawyer was able to actually win against this agency, and this is just the tip of the iceberg of what I told you, is amazing. And hopefully we can improve on that and try to get something going. Ultimately, try to get the universities and the schools engaged in like these indoor hatcheries, because
Yeah,
I think
very
without
important.
those, well, an indoor hatchery, so we could control the temperature, so we could create some males as well. Otherwise, we're literally not going to have any sea turtles. And this is a global issue, and nobody wants to pick it up. I've tried to get to the United Nations. I've tried to get to IUCN. Nothing, just crickets. I mean, it's. I mean, I don't want to say conspiracy, but it seems unbelievable that nobody wants to really pick up the story, because it's not just a huge global issue about sea turtles, but it's indicative of other things that's going on as well. So that's my good news. And if that's the good news, then you can imagine, kind of like what the rest of the news is like. Um, Continuing with the theme of aquatic marine life, we have the
Mm-hmm.
situation with the manatees. And much like the sea turtles, the manatees don't get really much attention in the news. In fact, a lot of people didn't know we had manatees. They didn't know what a manatee was. And it wasn't until this year that manatees did get some news, some attention. And the reason is because, again, the state has effectively killed. I'm not sure of the actual numbers because it's hard to keep up, but about 25% of the population has died this year,
Mm-hmm.
and the population is like 4 to 5 thousand, and they're only found in Florida.
That's dang. I'm
Yeah,
s-
yeah,
but
I know,
you know
I know.
you're on the case, and you're doing a lot of things. You've done legislative work with these organizations. You've done a lot. Your blog is amazing. You've written so much. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the legislative stuff, and what kind of things have you been successful with, and what kind of things are you not successful with in fights for all of these things. And then maybe we can expand to the manatees and then out to the wolves.
Well, Sam.
Yeah. We all love the wolves.
Yeah, you would think that with all of the dog lovers in the country, that would somehow translate to wolves, because after all, dogs come from wolves. And in fact, huskies were bred with wild wolves up until I think like the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah.
So somehow that love does not extend to the wolf or the coyote killing contest, or even the fox for that matter. I think more people are concerned about wearing a fox coat than preserving the fox. But it always kind of amazed me,
Yeah.
that people will, oh, I love my dog, especially the ones who have the big dogs, the huskies, the shepherds, the Dobermans.
I did.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
well, I did too. I had a giant standard poodle, and physically they look like a wolf. Certainly, some breeds like the Akitas and the Huskies really do look like wolves, and yet when it came to the wolf itself and the coyote, not a lot of not a lot of concern, not a lot of love. I'm happy to say Florida does not have a wolf population. Otherwise, that would be just one more
Then
species that
one
we're
more thing.
considering.
Yeah.
One more
No.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Do they hunt crocs? They hunt crocs too?
Yes, I actually spoke at a hearing. Gosh, when was that? 2011, 2012. I know I'm always like the bearer of bad news. It
Well,
was
no,
almost 10 years
I
ago.
am too.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone who deals in the environment or the greater good, it's hard to come up with any kind of good news. But I did go to a hearing, and I spoke at a hearing for the Loxahatchee Wildlife Refuge. And
Beautiful.
fun fact: a lot of people think that a refuge has the most amount of protection, but they don't. 60% of our refuge, you're allowed to fish and do some kind of hunting, which is not really what a refuge is. But I did go to a hearing, and Loxahatchee wanted to open up hunting, which they succeeded, in alligators. We don't have very many crocodiles, but alligators.
Okay.
And they said, well, just going to be a limited harvest. It's always a harvest, just a little, just a few here and there. And I said, that's a backdoor way in. Today it's 10. Next year it'll be 100. Next thing you know, we won't have any alligators left.
Mm.
And you're going to destroy the ecosystem. Then, of course, you have the airboats, which are very loud, like
Oh
being at a
yeah.
rock. like being at a rock concert.
They wreck
So
all of the beauty. In a friend of ours, Sam, has property down there, and he's on the water, and the airboats just wreck everything.
they do. They do. They're extremely noisy and polluting and very disruptive. And they allow the airboats in these wildlife refuges.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes,
Mm-hmm.
to answer your question, we do hunt alligators. I'm not actually sure of a species we don't openly hunt. I honestly can't think of years ago.
Yes.
And against their own science, they decided to have a bear hunt. And they thought that it would take months to kill X amount. And they exceeded the number that they had agreed to in 3 days. In 3 days, they
Mm.
had killed more bears than they had anticipated. So, with public pressure, we had to shut that down. But that's the kind of state. It's the sea turtles, the manatees, the sharks, the
Right.
bears, alligators. Well, they might protect the cockroach, um,
Oh,
but other than
can
other than that, I
right?
don't think
Can you
it's
tell
safe
me a
for
little
Florida.
about I did a show a couple of years ago on the manatees, and it just nothing changes. It just gets worse. I mean, you're out there with the with you're with the groups, any groups that you're associated with. I mean, tell us about the algae and the things that are happening with the manatees.
Well, there's one group that is Save the Manatee Club, and Pat Rose runs it. And they
Okay.
are the only official group that is trying to look out for the manatee. But the thing is, when you run a nonprofit, you have to walk a very fine line because the state could come in and pull your permits, and then you're out of business. So it kind of falls to people like me who don't have an official affiliation. We can say the things that need to be said.
Yeah.
We can be a little more assertive. We
Uh-huh.
can call people out,
Okay.
get out more of the truth, kind of thing. But as far as the manatees go, if you look at the last 20 years, every year more and more have been killed. And for the longest time, through like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, manatee mortality was mostly from boat strikes. And I mean, there was a little poaching, but mostly from like boat strikes. And it was, 4 or 5 here, 20, 30 there kind of thing, not overly significant. And then in the last 10 years, all of a sudden it went to 100, 200, 300, 500. I mean, just off the rails. It just blows your mind. Um, One of the big things is that all of the things that the state of Florida has been doing, like spraying poison in the water, eventually catches up with you.
Mm-hmm.
When you initially do it, you have some immediate effect. But as the poison builds up and the years go on and on and on, and each generation of manatee that's born is maybe a little sicker, has a weaker immune system, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, all that you've been doing catches up to you. And so that's what we've been seeing the last few years. The red tide has gotten worse. The blue-green algae, which is actually cyanobacteria. I don't know why they call it blue-green algae. It almost sounds
Now,
pretty, but it's
but
not. It's deadly.
people from the university are working on these issues, and are they not?
They get a lot of money for funding,
Mm-hmm.
and then they say it will take months or years to do these studies, and then they release the studies. You don't need studies. You don't need studies to figure out how to save the manatee or the sea turtle for that matter. You want to save the manatee, you need to have an immediate moratorium, actually, a permanent ban on
Okay,
all spraying of herbicides in the water.
I can get with that. I can get with that. And so I understand that with the studies. This is just something that they have to do. And it's what is it called? The Florida
Florida Fish and Wildlife
okay.
Commission.
And of course, that's not going to happen because of the sugar industry and the agricultural industry.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And also the tourist industry, the leisure boaters, they want the
Oh.
waterways cleared of any kind of vegetation. But this also poisons people, the people that drink this water, the people that swim in this water, the people that live near the water. I can tell you that the CDC and the EPA came down a couple of years ago and they took tests of people up in Martin County, especially around Port Lucie, Stewart area, because I knew some of the people. And they took samples like blood and skin and those kind of samples to kind of see the effects of what it was like living and inhaling all of the bacteria from the blue-green algae and the red
Hmm.
tide. If you think those studies are going to be released, no, they're not. They're not going to be
Really?
released. No,
Now,
no,
what
no.
about the university? Don't they feel, there's a problem if they're doing this research and they're not matching their research with other universities around the world with the same type of problems in their waterways? I mean, I guess because I worked in a university for a long time, so maybe I'm being a little, oh, come on, they have to.
I wish they would. I can tell you that one of the universities, Florida Atlantic University, FAU in Boca Raton, is the university which has two professors, Jeanette Weineken and her husband, Mike Salmon. They are the
Okay.
professors who are doing the dreadful experiments on the critically endangered leatherback hatchlings.
Mm,
So they are
leatherback
doing,
hatchlings.
they are doing experiments on sea turtles, which doesn't save them, has absolutely nothing to do with conservation, and there's nothing to justify experimenting on that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that university. Mote Marine. Mote Marine will spend a few $1,000s on a couple of studies, but what they really spent their time on was raising, I think, something like 10 or $15 million, expanding their aquarium. So they are more concerned with captive animals
Yeah.
than doing anything about saving the sea turtles or the manatees or fixing the problem. Like I said, you want to fix the problem, an immediate moratorium on spraying the
Right.
chemicals right now, which you could do literally right now.
Right.
Um, it doesn't just kill millions and millions of fish and the manatees and the dolphins and the sea turtles. It also makes a huge amount of humans sick.
Yeah.
And not only do we not inform the tourists, but the state of Florida actively, through the park department and the Board of Tourism, openly lie to the tourists. They'll send out flyers telling them that it's okay to be on the beach and inhale all this. It's okay to eat the local fish. It's okay to go swimming. It's not. Um, but the
Mm,
tourism industry is like $1 billion industry, and so that's what we're up against.
right.
So the universities, they don't seem all that likely to want to do anything,
Mm,
but they're kind of stuck because if they did, they would have the state come down on them and all that money and all that power, and they don't want to do that. I'm of the philosophy I'd rather go down fighting. I mean, I'm going to go down
yes.
anyway.
You
I'd rather go
are a
down.
fighter. Everything I
I'd rather.
have seen, you are an activist, you are a fighter. I'm very proud of you. You've
Somebody
done
has to.
things that, well, yeah, and that's you. Let's hear a little bit about some of your most uh, out there, maybe activism in Florida, or maybe even before.
Well, let's see. I'm probably one of the, not the only.
Uh-oh. How did this happen? Okay, wait a second, guys. She's frozen. Up, wait. Are you coming back? Okay. I have to tell her if she freezes. Hang on, guys. We'll work on this. If you freeze, you can get back in. You could come out and come back in through the chat. I mean, through the green room. Can you hear me, Stacy? Gee, she's only in Florida. I'm going to write to her. Hang on, guys. I'm going to put on some
Oh,
music. Oh,
you're
you're
back?
back. Okay.
Oh, I'm
I
back.
don't know
I'm
why
back.
that
Okay.
happened. We had a little blip. Maybe somebody doesn't like what we're talking about.
Technology.
Technology, ain't it
I don't know.
grand?
Technology. It's Florida. It's Florida. Um, but so I'm not the only person, but I'm certainly among the very few that actually tries to hold the state accountable. So when I go to hearings for the South Florida Water Board or the EPA or things like
Yeah.
that, um, since I don't have a job to protect, I don't have kids in school, so I don't have a lot of the things that other people have where they might want to say something, but they can't. So I
Right.
will call people out by name and I will look into their background and I will say, well, this is, you're a realtor. So of course that shades you're thinking on something. And that's why you don't want clean water. That's why you side with industry, that kind of thing. So I've been doing that for a really long time. I can tell you that before I started working with sea turtles, when I was in New York, I spent a lot of time rescuing mostly dogs and cats, but other animals that had been neglected and abused on private property, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't one. There were a few of us. We actually worked with the local police down, quietly. Um, we knew that there wasn't going to be anything positive if we called animal control or anything like that. The courts weren't going to get involved. So if we saw a dog or a cat, it was chained up, it was starved, it was abused, we went and we rescued that animal and found it a home. We did what needed to be done. That's why my email is no permission needed, because that's kind of my theme. No permission needed to do
To
the right
rescue.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
show. That's
Yeah.
right. Well, I've got everything to pull up. So keep going. Keep going while I do the screen share and show where that is because it's really good. This is, she's got the, where is it? Is it in your Twitter? Yeah, there it is. No permission needed to rescue an animal in need.
Right.
No
Right.
permission.
Right.
No, no, no.
Actually, if you go back to the Twitter feed, you can see that picture. That was actually taken last year. And when I say that, I'm saying that to try to catch people's attention. Like if you're walking down the beach and you see it covered with dead, not just dead fish. There's a lot of things in there that you wouldn't normally see, like tropical fish, baby sharks, dolphins wash up. But if you're walking down the beach, that's not normal. And the thing is, if it's
Of
doing
course
that
it's
to the
not.
seafood, what is it doing to you if you're
Ugh.
eating that seafood, right? So that's why when I said, oh, the fresh catch of the day is really, heart failure, kidney disease,
Right.
because I want people to make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people might not want to be that assertive, but at this stage of the game, we're really like at a Hail Mary here. It is really kind of a crap show, and not just in Florida, but we are doing things that we cannot be undone. We're really hitting like DEFCON 1 kind of thing.
Well, we
And
know this from climate disruption. And
yes,
we, having you on here and talking about this, while I know that everybody in the chat is bothered by it, we are almost, you know, uh, hardened. We are hardened. But when it comes to animals, we fall apart even though we know that our carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 450, whatever it is, 420 ppm, even though we know that we are not stopping polluting, even though we know all of that, the animal abuse, the horrors that are happening, it just gets to us all. It's really it's difficult. And a lot of us are vegetarians or vegans or, what have you. And it hits home. It really hits home. It's hard,
the
but
thing
yet
about
you're here.
the thing about the whole thing with the climate and the greenhouse gas, I remember back in the dark ages, like before there was no internet, there was no cable TV, nobody had a selfie, there was no Facebook to get your news from. So this was back in 1985. Us old timers would remember. And
Yes. Well, my
PBS had a show. Yeah,
demographics is our
yes,
age.
yeah, yeah, the good
Yeah.
old days. Um,
Yeah.
so back in 1985, and I'm not sure if this show was actually produced then or if it was already a couple of years old, but Meryl Streep was
Mm-hmm.
one of the narrators, and it was on PBS, or yeah, PBS Channel 13 in New York, and it was called Race to Save the Planet, 1980.
Wow. I remember that.
Okay, well,
It's,
I watched in
oh
1985,
my
right?
God.
Yes, yes. And do you remember Sandy,
Yes.
the whole big thing. And I say 1985, geez Louise, that's 35 years ago. That's
Yeah.
3.5 decades. So Race to Save the Planet covered several different issues, but one of the issues was CFCs,
Yeah.
chlorofluorocarbon, with the aerosols. And that was like the whole big thing with the ozone. And I was very young. And
Me
I looked at
too.
what I could. Yeah, I looked at what I could available. The old days, you had to go to the library and actually read these journals and studies and all that kind of stuff. And I
Yes, we
determined that
did.
this was right. This was a problem, and we needed to do something. And I had hope back then. I don't have hope now. I had hope back then. Um, so when people say, "Oh, this and that," I'm thinking, we've known about this since the
Right.
1980s. We've known about it. You and I have known about it since the 1980s.
Yeah.
That means that the government and the scientists, the universities, have known about it before that. And
Oh,
yet
yeah.
here we are at the precipice. And I mean, it's basically our entire life has just been, well, studies. We'll do another study. Maybe we'll pass a law. Then maybe in 2 years we'll get some funding for the law. I mean, it's just literally kicking it down and down and down and down the line. So I had
Oh,
hope
that's
in the
because of the
80s.
fossil fuel industry.
Yes, yeah, the energy sector runs everything. They really run everything. They have total control, not just over the military.
Hmm.
They have control over environmental laws, labor laws, public land use, whether or not we invade a country. If you look at what's going on, it really comes down to energy. And when I say energy, I don't just mean oil. I mean coal, gas, fracking, even green. Anything to do with energy. They
Everything.
really are like the mothership hovering
Hmm.
over. So I saw your show on COP26. Um, I honestly didn't even bother to pay attention to what was going on in Scotland, um, because it's almost like words coming out of their mouth, but there's not going to be anything uh, anything substantial coming out of that. So when Biden said we have this whole climate agenda, you and I both know that's not really true. Um,
No.
if you deliberately don't tell the truth, we call that a lie and a fraud. And I don't know what the Biden climate agenda is, but it certainly can't be for any kind of climate that I'm aware of, because we're expanding the livestock, big agriculture, animal agriculture. And going back to the 80s, we knew, 20, 30, 40 years ago that animal agriculture was extremely detrimental. Forget the fact that people like their burgers. It was extremely detrimental to the planet. Um, the cows really contaminate the drinking water. The water flows through the land gets contaminated.
Yeah.
Uh, they're devastating when they do the grazing. They don't graze like the native wildlife, like the horses and
Sure.
the burros and other ungulates that are native to this country. So when you hear politicians talk about, and greenwashing, companies talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
climate change, and then you see public land just filled, as far as the eye can see, with belching, farting cows and sheep, then as my mom used to say, something's rotten in Denmark. Um, so that's where we're at, where people will listen to a speech and they're like, oh, some leader's doing something. No, no, because as Biden was in Scotland talking about, oh, we're going to do something for the climate, he was expanding the roundups of the wild horses and burros to remove them off public land
Yeah.
and put in more cows and sheep. If you look
Hmm.
at what's going on in California with the Thule elk, much like the manatee, is only found in this one little national seashore in California, and they are being killed in a national seashore to make room for dairy cows. The wolves, of course, always have people hating them.
Yeah.
This is not just the ranchers, but you
Yeah.
see that on and on and on down the line. So clearly, there's a lot of lying going on when it comes to that,
Tell us about
unfortunately.
that background you were telling me about with the wolf. I mean, we know the wolf is a sacred type of animal, but I would love to if you would go over that. Maybe we could just segue into a little history.
Okay. Well, full disclosure, I am a dog lover, but I'm also a cat lover. I currently have two cats that are rescues, but I grew up with dogs and I just love them to pieces. So, like most people, growing up, I didn't really know where dogs came from. I mean, other than like the pet store, but I had no idea because there's so many different kind of dogs. I had no idea that they actually came
Right.
from wolves, and
Right.
that humans had kind of domesticated the wolf, so to speak, a long time ago, and had some sort of relationship with them for thousands and thousands of years. So when we look at our relationship with wolves now and the last few hundred years, it has been very bitter. But it wasn't always like that. Back in ancient times, the wolf was revered. I mean, it's a predator, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but it was revered for being a fierce warrior and very loyal. And when you study the biology of wolves, the alpha male and female and the wolf pack and how they all raise the pups, I mean, it's amazing. Oh my gosh, they're better parents than most
Beautiful.
humans are. Yeah, it's amazing, amazing creatures,
Yeah.
amazing whole relationship they have, the whole dynamic. Uh, so if you go back a couple thousand years, the ancient Romans actually revered the wolf because they thought, they had mythology before Christianity. And one of the mythology was Romulus and Remus were these mythical twin babies that were abandoned by their father, but raised by a she wolf. And so, yeah, well, but she was very nurturing. She was very nurturing. So
I'm a
so
she
she raised
wolf.
them, and they founded the Roman Empire. So we didn't always hate wolves. We were actually loved them and revered them. If you go back to ancient times, if you obviously were a shepherd and you had some sheep and you saw a wolf or a coyote or any large animal for that matter, of course you would be leery and concerned, and that would be normal. That would be fine. That's not the crazy stuff that's going on now. So there was always some of that, but the deep, insane hatred, that's something relatively new. So we went from having a respect and appreciation for the wolf to hating the wolf. And that actually started with Christianity, religion, where they looked at the wolf, and I don't know why they chose the wolf of all creatures. They're actually much more
Right.
fierce and larger predators, but whatever. They descended on the wolf, and they said that the wolf embodies like all the evil of man. The wolf is actually mentioned several times in the Bible and not
Mm-hmm.
figuratively. And they said that the wolf is symbolic of Satan and evil and greed and all that kind of stuff. And it got worse and worse and worse, obviously, as time went on. And so part of that theme was if we got rid of the wolf, we would get rid of the evil that lies within our species. Well, Europe had
Mm-hmm.
exterminated the wolf a long time ago. And I would not say Europe is a bastion of love and peace. That just doesn't exist in our species. We exterminated the wolf in the lower 48, and we did not become a bastion of love and peace. It just doesn't work like that. But that is still going on today. And then on top of that, you had folklore. And of course, most of us grew up with and remember the Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs and the Boy Who
Yep.
Cried Wolf and various other things. And different countries and different cultures had a different take on that. But yeah, it was passed down. Basically, the theme was the big bad wolf, um, and the human was always innocent, innocent
Oh
bystander.
yeah, we are just the best.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we're
as
just
the
we're just
world exists for us. It's our oyster. Well, isn't that the religious that everything is for human beings? Everything is for human beings to take, and look what we've
exactly.
done.
Exactly. It's like the humans are just, lollygagging around in the meadow picking flowers, and oh, here comes this wolf, I don't know, for no reason, charging us, kind of thing. But even today, if you look at some of the fables, uh, they still have that theme from a long time ago. And even the pictures show the wolf, going after the, innocent little girl, kind of thing. There have been a few enlightened authors who've decided that they're going to write a new fairy tale from the wolf's perspective. Uh, but I don't know how well that's gonna take. But if you go online and you look at Bible classes, they still have, and in fact, I wrote an article about this, they still teach the whole thing about the wolf as an animal, but also the wolf symbolically. But it still exists today. So I try to tell people, even if we got rid of all of the oil companies and the coal companies and the mining companies and all the big agriculture, we would still have that undercurrent of hatred for wolves that is illogical. It's not based in science.
Illogical.
It's not based in anything in reality. I mean, the truth is, very few people will ever actually see a wild wolf or a manatee or sea turtle for that matter. I got to see them. I had to travel across the country, spend thousands of dollars, bundle up, stand in the snow, and then through a spotting scope, I got to see the Druid pack, which no longer exists, from like 2 miles away. That's how I got to see wolves. So if you listen to hunters and the ranchers, they are talking as if anybody could come across a wolf and they do all this damage, and wolves get scapegoated and blamed for a host of things. What's happened now is that the government is not even waiting until there's some proof that there's predation, and how you can prove that it was a wolf and not a mountain lion or a bear or another human. Nobody ever bothers to go that route. But we are preemptively killing not just wolves, but wolf pups, like in Timberline.
Oh, I
They,
know. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah,
You have the article too. I have it somewhere.
yeah.
Oh, but yep, I have it. I'm going to pull it up while you're talking about it.
Yeah, actually, in the article, I take you back to the Etruscan she-wolf, and I try to educate people how we got to this point where it's now acceptable to go into a den and kill nursing pups. And then the USDA said, oh, well, we caught them, predating livestock. Pups could not possibly predate livestock. And all they did was take the word of a rancher. So they didn't
Right.
even wait for any kind of proof. When this story broke, it got quite a lot of attention. People were outraged. I actually spoke to several people in Timberland, and they
Mm-hmm.
were heartbroken and outraged. I think the pack might actually be destroyed. And so it did get some national attention. And wouldn't you know it, Sandy, just 3 months later, wolf pups in Oregon were killed preemptively for the
Yeah.
same reason. In 2017, a bill was passed, HR 69, and
Mm-hmm.
it was passed, and it allowed for the killing of wolf pups and hibernating bears and bear cubs. And one of the practices they use is called denning. Now, up in Alaska, they used to do this all the time, illegally. But this law actually made it legal to do. Um, and that was kind of a first. In fact, the law was so egregious, people in Alaska were like, oh my gosh, really? You're going to make that illegal to throw dynamite in a den and blow up whatever wolf pack or family of
Oh
bears?
God,
Yeah.
I
So
can't
anyway,
deal with
so
it.
yeah, so that's where we are today. And just in the last year or two, I think we have killed almost half of our wolf population, which was not very large to begin with. A couple hundred years ago, we had tens of thousands of wolves. We had millions of wild horses. So to say that we have a few hundred or a couple thousand wolves is a drop in a bucket to what this country used to have for a long, long time. And we've managed to like with the manatee, get it down to where it's almost unsustainable. Halland, of course, isn't going to do anything about it. She's pretty much sided with the ranchers. But what's interesting is I
Is it
was
a
in Yellowstone.
forced? Is it a forced sighting? I mean, does she have a choice? I wonder.
Well, I believe she's just a figurehead. I looked into her background during her
Yeah.
confirmation hearing because she'd only been a congresswoman for 2 years, so it wasn't like she was a career politician.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a rancher, and her family's a rancher, and they hunt.
Oh.
Yeah, they hunt.
Okay.
Um, yeah, they hunt. So I was leery about all of that. And I can tell you honestly, and again, this is something that most people, yeah, Little Red Riding Hood, most people would not say this publicly, but during the confirmation hearing, it was played over and over and over again that she's, Native American and somehow she was
Mm-hmm.
going to be, better for the environment. And I said that we looked at her and we're hoping for Chief Seattle, and we got something
Right.
more like yeah, that's going on, that whole situation. So we looked at her. We were hoping for Chief Seattle, but what we really got was more like Hitler as far as genocide.
Ooh,
So
ooh,
I
ooh.
believe, yeah, and well,
Oh,
that's my
that's
opinion, but
harsh. It's okay. That's
well,
why you're here.
no,
That's why you're here. You know, we're
I'm
hunters here where I live.
yeah,
There's a lot of deer hunters, and I mean, I can the venison, and I don't eat it anymore. But I understand the lifestyle. But nobody's eating a wolf.
no, no,
You know,
no,
this is just killing for pleasure.
sake of
This is
killing, yeah.
pleasure killing. It's disgusting. Pleasure killing is disgusting, and that's I'm giving it back to you.
Actually, what I saw was even worse with relationship to the coyotes. They have these awful coyote killing contests. And I've actually seen pictures, two different men, two different houses, so it's not the same guy, where the house is literally covered with dead coyotes.
Oh,
No,
that's
yeah,
sickness. And we have
yeah, it is.
coyotes
It
all
is.
over. I can't let my cats out because of the coyotes. And I have not run into anybody like that. I don't want to run into anybody like that.
Yeah, I don't want to run
No.
into anybody like that either. There was a chance for the state of Nevada to do right. They're not doing right with the horses. They're not doing right with the burros. They're not doing right with a lot of wildlife, but they had a chance to do right. They had a chance to finally ban the coyote killing contest. I mean, come on, people. We don't need a contest to kill. And with these contests, it's basically just how many you can kill. Whoever
It's
kills the most
disgusting.
amount of times. Yeah,
I
whoever
know.
kills the
And
most
it's been
amount of
going on. I
right.
did a
So
show on
they,
this, Stacy, 6 years ago. I mean, it's like
I know,
it doesn't stop. And no
it
matter
doesn't stop.
how
It
well,
doesn't
Scott
stop.
says here that the environmentalists have mostly been purged out of federal government. So you can't I don't want to say
That
the
is that
words.
is true. That is true. That is true. Infested are federal agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, obviously the USDA, the National Park Service. Yeah, they're infested with ranchers and hunters and people from the oil companies. I don't think we have any environmentalists. I don't think we have anybody with any real integrity, because there's no way you could possibly see what's going on and go, yeah, that's okay with me. The state of Nevada had a chance to ban these contests and they didn't. But it's not just Nevada. These coyote killing, well, it's not just coyotes.
And
There's
these
pigs,
people are
squirrels,
they're the Don Jr. types, vicious assholes with
vicious.
no
Yeah,
morals and no values. They're not feeding their family like my Amish neighbors are. They're just doing it to kill, just
to
to
kill.
kill, and that is our country. And I don't know if other maybe the UK they have their little fox hunts, maybe other but I don't know if we take the cake for killing to kill, just to murder. We
I
murder
think we're
animals.
pretty up there. I think we're pretty up there. Well, there's a lot of that going on in Europe, but as far as cultures in country, yeah, we are definitely one of the most when it comes to hunting. Um, it's just, the National Park Service is now allowing hunting inside parks. They have allowed outside hunters to come in and killed native free roaming bison at the Grand Canyon. They've allowed elk at Grand
Are they
Teton.
overpopulated?
No,
Or
are
is
you
that the
kidding? No,
excuse?
no, no. Are
Yeah.
you kidding
Because
me?
here
No.
in the state parks, the state parks are where some of them are where the hunters go during hunting season, but it's a very brief season. I
No,
don't know
these are
what it
these are
is out
national
there.
parks. These
These
are
are
national
national parks.
parks.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. The Grand Teton actually allowed a hunt. I think it's pretty much over. They killed off all of their mountain goats, and
Oh my
they killed.
God. In the Grand Tetons? You're freaking kidding me.
Yeah, I wrote an article about it, and the title of the article is "How Come They're Native in One Park and Not Native in Another." So
Wow.
Grand Teton said, well, Wyoming. Grand Teton said the mountain goats have to go because they're not native, which is not true, and that they're making the bighorn sheep sick. And
Mm,
my question is,
mm.
well, if you drive 30 minutes down to Yellowstone National Park, they also have mountain goats and they also have
Right.
bighorn sheep, and they're staying put. Oregon had tried, was it Oregon or Washington? Washington. Uh, I think last year or 2 years ago, had some sort of a hunt in the Cascades of mountain goats.
Oh boy.
And then they determined that was a wrong thing to do. So they
Mm-hmm.
decided they are now air vacuuming mountain goats. So my question is, how
Mm.
come Grand Teton, and you're talking about maybe like 100, not thousands of these goats, how come Grand Teton didn't just give up their mountain goats to Washington State, who is actively looking to replenish their population? I mean, it literally is so insane. There's no logic. There's no science, and there's no logic. There's certainly no humanity. But the National Park Service used to be terrible. The National Park Service used to go into the national parks and basically kill a lot of the predators to make it kind
Yeah.
of safe for the humans and to clean the park up, kind of
Ugh.
thing. And we exterminated the wolves. We almost exterminated a lot of the other predators. I think U.S. Fish and Wildlife might have killed the last wild jaguar
Mm.
because we used to have jaguars, and I don't even think we have those anymore.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's a real amazing national park service allowing outside hunters to come into a national park. And the thing about each park is it's different. In Mesa Verde, they're rounding up the wild horses just because there's no legitimate reason to round them up, but they're removing all of them from the park. They have Grand Teton exterminate all of their mountain goats, and they do
Mm.
allow some kind of hunting of the elk. Point Reyes wants to basically get rid of all of their Thule elk to make room for dairy cows. Um, on several western states, they basically want to remove all of the wild horses and burros, specifically to make room for ranchers. And then after that first wave, the second wave will be all of the extraction. The oil companies and the mining companies will come in, and because there won't
Oh,
be
the
anything left,
mining companies. They want to mine
everything,
everywhere
yeah,
for
everything.
lithium.
Yes,
Hey,
yeah,
did you write this poem, The Yellowstone
yes, I did.
Wolves?
Yes, I
Can
did.
we read? Can I read it to
Yes,
music?
yes, yeah. That
Okay,
was
I'm gonna
one of my
put
work that was
on.
published. Yes.
You mind if I read it?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna
Okay.
narrate this. This is Stacy. She's so talented. The Yellowstone wolf's future seems a bit in peril. What it what is it about wolves that makes some men feral? The pups yelp for freedom in their lonely cry. Why must such innocence be fated to die? Can no one see the senselessness of life wasted even before truth lets maturity be tasted? The wolf is a great treasure of beauty to us all, lest we forget how extinction exacts the fall. Must all the wolves die so the ranchers can profit? Is no one offended enough to try to stop it? Greed and fear strike a deep and bitter blow, but those of us with souls are still in the know. We must stand together and stop this mad endeavor because, my dear friends, extinction lasts forever. Oh, wow. You're a beautiful poet, too.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. That's my love letter to the wolves. Yeah.
I had to read it with music. It moved me. It moved me. And you have more. I know you didn't want to read your poems, but I mean, she has more stuff, and I'm not going to read them all. You guys, everything's in the show notes, but she's a poet. She has more poetry. She has the LinkedIn. If we don't save the planet, who else will? Follow Stacy on LinkedIn as well. And then you sent me this article about the, now this makes me sick, the panel that
The
won't
Coyote.
ban the kite. Yeah, I mean, these are the little guys that live in my yard. They live in my yard. Oh, I said I
And
wouldn't say.
look at that picture. That's just one guy. There's like 30 of them there.
Yeah,
It's insanity.
vicious. killing
insanity.
for no
Yeah,
reason.
killing
And
really.
this makes me feel like I maybe, never want to eat meat again. And I like eggs, but I'm not killing anything for an egg, right? So anybody that wants to read all this definitely can read all this. And then I think you had sent me the On the Edge of Extinction, the sea turtles. That was what we talked about in the beginning, I'm pretty sure, and the light pollution. So all of this, guys, is in the show notes because we're going on an hour. And I have a couple of questions for you. Let me see here, or comments, if you guys don't mind. I'm gonna. Philip Blair said, "Can someone sue for the release of those documents or find a whistleblower?" Now, I think that's going back a little while. What do you think?
I'm not sure which documents. Technically, you can FOIA, Freedom of
Right.
Information Act.
That's
But
good.
I can tell you, most of the stuff you get back is redacted. Means they black out all the good stuff. If they even send you the stuff that you want, it can take a long time. So FOIA isn't what it used to be. You can try it.
Okay.
You might get better luck if you go in person and try to talk to somebody and
Okay.
see if you can convince them to give you information. Lawsuits take a lot of money and time, but they can be effective. Like I mentioned, it was quite a shocker when I heard last week that FWC lost a lawsuit. That was amazing. And by the way, the Bureau of Land Management, the former governor of Montana, he sued and won against the Bureau of Land Management, and they're like a monster. So you can do it. It takes a lot of work,
Okay.
perseverance. You can't say no. No permission needed. You can't say no. You just have to keep going and find some good people. Whistleblowers. I'm a whistleblower. Not a lot of people. The best kind of whistleblower is someone who doesn't have anything to lose. Most
Like you
people
said.
want to come forward, but they can't afford to lose their job, or they can't afford to move and pull their kids out of school. So you need to kind of find someone like me. I don't have kids. I don't have a job to protect. I can say anything. So I tell people, if you can't come forward, give me the information. I will vet it. And if I can vet it with independent sources and it's real, I will do whatever I can. That's the best advice I can give you,
You
which is
get
not a
it.
lot, but it's something.
That's wonderful. Well, Philip had another question. He asked again, experiments on sea turtles for what? I think we're going back to the beginning, when
Yeah,
we were
good,
talking.
good, good question. Actually, I have all this information, so you can go to my blog and email me. You can follow me on Twitter and send me a private message. You can follow me on
Perfect.
Facebook. Everything is open. You don't have to subscribe. Everything is open, so you can just Google me and you can send an email. I can do all the documentation
Oh,
as
and
far as
please subscribe.
what yeah what
Please
yeah as far
subscribe
as
to her
um,
YouTube.
what kind of studies are done. It has to do with hearing, a lot of hearing and vision. And all you have to do is go out at the beach at night and you can get all the information you need. You don't need to experiment on sea turtles. A lot of these studies are done by professors who have to justify their job with grant
Hmm.
money. It's not the old days, 20, 30, 40 years ago. If you were a professor at a university, you were hired full time to teach and you had a salary. Now it's more grant money and outside grant money. So you kind of have to justify that. So you kind of come up with these cockamamie studies to make it look like you're doing something. But there is no justification to do any kind of research on endangered species. And in fact, I found an article done in Canada where researchers actually studied the the ethics of doing research on an endangered species, and they
Oh.
came to the conclusion it is unethical. So I do, yeah. So I it doesn't
What?
it's
Oh my
unethical
God.
to do a study on an endangered species, which is right. So I will be going after FAU after the new year.
Wow. Well, we're going to
Someone's got to,
definitely,
because
yeah.
this can't go on.
Well, we will definitely be following you. I had a comment and I did. Oops, I lost it. Shoot. I had a really good comment. Oh, well, somebody already wants to marry you. He says, wait. We have to bring a little levity in here. That
Yes.
was, I don't, wait, I don't have kids. He says, will you marry me? No, she doesn't have children. She doesn't have children. Billy says no whistleblower goes unpunished. He's from Florida. He was making a lot of comments. Yeah. I lost this really good one from way far away, but this has been really great, and we're getting towards that time. Everybody, Staci, why don't you give us your closing commentary, and then I'm going to end the show. Staci, you hang out while we end the show so we can talk afterwards. Guys, okay. I want to thank you. And of course, I can't forget, I have to always do my little appeal here. So don't forget, please like and subscribe to my channel and Staci's. She needs subscribers, and I'm going to give her a little help with YouTube, to get her all kinds of slicked up. Yeah. All right, Staci, go for it.
Well, I actually started my blog and my YouTube channel back in July. So I've only been at this about 4 months. And the main reason that I did this is because I'm tired of the media blackout. I'm tired of reading articles about nonsense. I'm tired of reading articles where I read about some atrocious thing and then they don't give me who's doing it or what to do. So my articles, I try to give you an action alert. You get to the end of the article, hopefully you're angry, you're motivated to do something, and I tell you, make this phone call, send this email, go to this protest, donate to this legitimate group.
Wonderful.
There's stuff for you to do to try to feel like you are helping. Anybody can contact me. Please contact me. Questions, concerns, information, anything.
Or in Florida, if somebody wants to work with you.
Yes. If you have any information, if you have any questions, you can contact me in a variety of ways. Reality Checks with Staci-lee. You can follow me, Facebook, Twitter, my blog, YouTube channel. You can message me, and I will get back to you. And if there's some horrible thing going on that you think I don't know about, or you think needs a light shined on it, I will try to help as best I can. I try to cover as many issues as I possibly can, which is, as Sandy, as you know, not easy to do.
No,
not easy to do.
Listen, we do have an important question. Fieldy says, Staci, who is the most competent legal defenders who are supporting the banning of toxic spraying in Florida, especially for near the schools, parks, and public spaces? To start with, thank you.
Okay, so what was the question?
The most competent legal defenders who are supporting the banning of toxic spraying in Florida, especially for near schools, parks, and public spaces, to start with. Maybe you write to her.
Yeah, actually, if you're looking for the kind of lawyer, send me an email, no permission needed 1@yahoo.com, because I'm thinking the lawyer that sued FWC and got the permits back for stop, he might be your guy, because that would be FWC off the top of my head. I know a few lawyers, whether or not they're going to do something about it. Florida's a tough state, but send me an email and maybe we could help work on that.
All right, thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Staci. I am sure that I will have you on again. This was, tough but good, as Rich Diana said. Tough but good. I am not going to show the video that I made in the beginning because it's 4 minutes long, and I don't know if all you saw it, but I'm not going to end on the down note. I'm going to end on the good note. And Staci, again, thank you. All right, everybody. Peace out.
Thank you for having me. Don't give up. That's my best thing. Don't give up.
Never give up. Never.
Go down fighting.
Never give up. Oh, they can't hear us. So I like to put their stuff up, if they have any good comments, but it doesn't look like. Oh, love. Thanks, ladies. Love. Great conversation. Benny Loco. And then I shut this off. All right, let's see. We'll go another couple of minutes. Oh, you can hear us?